Hey guys, tonight we drift back past the Romans, past the first stirrings of philosophy, back to a time of bronze, of heroes, and of walls that were said to have been built by the gods themselves. We're standing on a beach, the wind whipping salt spray into our faces, and we're watching the last of 1,000 ships turn and sail for the horizon. The war is over, but tonight we're changing the ending. We are going to find out what might have happened if the most famous wooden horse in history turned out to be less of a masterstroke and more of a gigantic fire hazard. This is a world where the vanquished become the victors, and where the echoes of their triumph will reshape everything that comes after. As a little reality check, your chances of surviving the original story were already pretty slim, but in the brutal, knife-edge world we're about to create, don't get too attached to your own shadow. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a huge help, and for a bit of fun, drop your location and local time in the comments. I see we have Da Nang, Vietnam, checking in just after 7 in the evening. It's always amazing to see where everyone is listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're leaning against the cool, massive stone of the Skian Gate, your spear feeling heavier than it did this morning. For 10 years, you have known nothing but this. 10 years of the Achaean camp sprawling on the beach like a festering wound, of the endless cycle of dust-choked battles and uneasy truces. 10 years of watching friends die for a cause that feels increasingly remote. And now this. The Achaeans are gone. Their camp is a wasteland of smoldering fire pits and refuse, the shoreline littered with the ghosts of 1,000 beached ships. All they left behind is that thing. It stands there in the space between the city and the sea, monstrously absurd. A horse, carved from the fur planks of their own ships, its wooden belly large enough to hold a king's ambition. Or more likely, a king's elite soldiers. It's so obviously a trick that it feels like an insult. The air hums with debate. Priests, flush with the seeming victory, declare it a sacred offering to Poseidon or Athene, a penance for the desecrated temples. Bring it into the city, they cry, and Troy will be forever impregnable. Your king, Priam, old and weary and so desperate for peace, seems inclined to agree. His daughter, Cassandra, is raving again, shrieking of fire and death, but no one ever listens to her. It's a pity, really. She has a frighteningly good track record. But this time, it's not just Cassandra. It's a grizzled captain named Eshen, a man who has repaired more breaches in these walls than the priests have offered prayers. You watch as he strides up to the horse, his face a mask of contempt. He doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. He just taps the hollow flank with the butt of his spear. The sound it makes is a deep, resonant boom, a boom that sounds suspiciously empty. And then he points out the details only a soldier would see. The faint scuff marks near the base, not from transport, but from ropes used on the inside. The almost invisible seams of a masterfully hidden door. He argues that no god would demand an offering that requires an instruction manual and, frankly, looks like it was assembled from a flat-packed box by a very angry carpenter. Historians still argue whether the Trojan War was a single, epic conflict or a composite memory of many smaller raids and skirmishes over several generations. But for you, standing here, it has been one very long, very real decade of fighting, and Eshen's quiet, soldierly logic cuts through the religious fervor. A quiet order is given, not to burn the horse, not yet. That would be too obvious. Instead, a new plan is whispered from commander to commander, a Trojan gambit to counter the Greek one. You are given your task. You and your company are to feign drunken celebration. Roll out the wine barrels, light the torches, and sing the victory hymns loud enough for the gods and any lurking ships to hear. It's the easiest, yet most tense, acting job of your life. Every laugh feels forced, every song a lie. You watch as a hand-picked team of Troy's finest warriors, silent as specters, surround the wooden beast, their bronze blades gleaming in the torchlight. Hours crawl by. The fake reverie continues, a macabre theater piece performed for an audience of ghosts and spies. Then, a signal, a flicker of a shielded lantern from the top of the walls. It means the lookouts have spotted them. The Achaean fleet, hidden behind the island of Tenedos, has turned back. They saw the bonfires of your celebration and assumed their trap was sprung. You see the dark shapes of their ships emerge from the gloom, their hulls scraping against the sand of the shore. The trap is closing, but not on Troy. It's closing on them. The great door of the horse creaks open. A rope ladder snakes down. The first man emerges, silhouetted against the stars. It's Odysseus himself, his wiry frame moving with a hunter's grace. But instead of landing on the quiet ground of a sleeping city, he's met with the cold point of a Trojan spear. Before a cry can escape his lips, he is pulled down, disarmed, and bound. One by one, the pride of the Achaean army descends from the belly of the beast, not as conquerors, but as prisoners falling into a perfectly laid trap. It's almost comically efficient. With the Greek commandos captured, the second part of the Trojan plan ignites. As the main Achaean force charges across the plain, drunk on their own arrogance and the promise of loot, the signal is given. Torches blaze to life along the entire length of Troy's walls. The Scaean gate, the euphoria of the charge has curdled into the flat, metallic taste of day-after reality. You trudge along the high-tide line, the sand sucking at your sandals. The rising sun, which should feel like a blessing, seems only to illuminate the horror in forensic detail. Before you is the wreckage of the Achaean ambition, a vast and miserable junkyard of splintered chariots, abandoned shields, and the twisted forms of men who will never see their homelands again. The Trojan dead are being gathered with reverence, their faces covered, their names whispered in sorrow. The Greeks, they are being gathered too, but for a different purpose. Piled like cordwood for mass pyres, their identities lost, their stories ending here on this foreign shore. After a decade of this, you thought you were numb to it. You were wrong. A part of you wants to sit in the sand and weep, not for them, but for the simple, brutal fact that this is what victory looks like. Back within the city walls, the mood is just as strange. The air is thick with the smells of incense from Thanksgiving rites mingling with the foul stench of the battlefield drifting in on the sea breeze. And in the central square, they are held. The lions now caged, men whose names were curses on your tongue only yesterday. There is Agamemnon, the High King, his face a thundercloud of disbelief, his magnificent armor replaced by a simple tunic. He looks smaller somehow. Less a king, more a sullen, defeated bureaucrat. Beside him, Menelaus, the man for whom this whole catastrophic enterprise was launched, simply stares at his own feet, lost in whatever private hell he now inhabits. And there, pacing back and forth in his small, roped-off enclosure like a wolf in a pit, is Odysseus of Ithaca. Even now, shackled and disgraced, his eyes are constantly moving, calculating, searching for an angle. You can almost hear the gears turning in his head as he tries to formulate a plan, perhaps involving a timeshare opportunity on his home island, if his captors would just listen for a moment. Their fate is being decided in the Megaron, the great hall of your king. You stand guard by the enormous cedar doors, listening to the heated voices within. Archaeologists and classicists still debate the exact nature of Trojan and Mycenaean kingship, whether the kings were absolute godlike rulers or more like first among equals chieftains. Listening now, you get the sense it's the latter. Priam is not a tyrant issuing decrees. He is a chairman of the board, hearing impassioned, contradictory advice. His son Paris, his youthful arrogance burned away by the long war and forged into something harder, argues for the sword. They broke the sacred laws of hospitality, Xenia, when they came here with fire and death, he spits. We owe them nothing. Execute them all. Let their heads line the walls as a message to any other pirate kings who think of sailing against us. But Hector, ever the pragmatist, counsels restraint. His voice is calm, carrying over the others. They are worth more to us alive than dead, father. Agamemnon is not one man, he is the wealth of Mycenae. Menelaus is Sparta, ransom them. Demand a price so high it will not only rebuild Troy, but will cripple their kingdoms for a generation. Let them return to their homes as failures, not martyrs. A murmur of agreement runs through the hall. The war was, after all, ruinously expensive for everyone. A sudden influx of Achaean gold and bronze has a certain appeal. A few of your fellow guards grumble that after a decade of fighting, they'll probably be stuck doing inventory on captured cauldrons and tripods, a fate somehow worse than battle. Then a third voice, one filled with a colder fury, speaks of humiliation. Let them live, yes, but as slaves. Let the king of men haul stones to repair the gate he tried to breach. Let Odysseus, the clever, dig latrines for the men who outsmarted him. The idea is met with a few vicious cheers, but Hector shakes his head. Breaking a king's body is easy. Breaking his spirit is a fool's errand, and it invites the wrath of the gods. In the end, Priam, his face carved with a decade of grief, makes his judgment. It is a cunning blend of all three arguments. Agamemnon, the leader of the host, and the man who sacrificed his own daughter for fair winds, an act of profound impiety in Trojan eyes, is to be publicly executed. A life for the countless lives lost. A message. For Menelaus and the other high princes, Hector's plan is approved. Heralds will be dispatched to their home cities with demands for a king's ransom in metal, grain, and treasure. But Odysseus is too dangerous. Too clever to be ransomed, too slippery to be trusted. He will not be killed, nor will he be put to common labor. He is to be a permanent, high-status political prisoner, a living trophy of Trojan victory. And your life takes another strange turn. You are assigned to his guard detail. You bring him his food, watch him in his comfortable but inescapable cell high in a tower overlooking the sea. He tries to talk to you, of course. He compliments your armor, asks about your family, tries to build the easy rapport of a commander with his soldier. You remain silent, remembering the warnings. He is a weaver of words, a serpent who can talk his way into a man's heart and poison it from within. You see his frustration, the simmering rage behind the veneer of civility. He is a lion, all right, and this cage will never hold his spirit. As the sun sets, you look out the window of his prison, past his pacing form. A single Trojan ship is sailing west, a tiny speck against the vast, wine-dark sea. It carries the news that will shatter the Achaean world. News of a dead high king, of captured heroes, of a failed war. It carries the ransom notes that will beggar kingdoms. You are witnessing the creation of a power vacuum. In Mycenae, in Pylos, in Sparta, there is no one in charge anymore. The palaces, already weakened by the long absence of their masters, are about to become hornets' nest. The first winter after the victory is brutally cold, but for the first time in a decade, the chill doesn't carry the familiar dread of a surprise Achaean raid. The war is a ghost that still haunts the city, in the empty chairs at family meals, in the thousand-yard stares of the veteran soldiers, but it is a ghost nonetheless. The immediate, bloody business of survival has given way to the slow, aching work of recovery. You've traded your spear, at least for now, for a mallet and chisel. Everyone has. You are part of a crew of 1,000 hands working to restore the great walls, the divine bones of your city. The rhythmic chip-chip-chip of masons is the new song of Troy, a percussive hymn of renewal that echoes from dawn till dusk. You run your hand over a massive limestone block before it's hoisted into place. Carved into its side is a small symbol, a trident inside a circle. It's a mason's mark, a signature from a man who helped build this wall centuries ago. A quirky little historical fact for you. These marks are found in ancient constructions all over the world. Quiet little, "I was here," messages from the past. Now, new marks are being carved beside the old ones, a silent conversation between generations of builders. Your own crew has a mark, a simple rendering of a wolf's head. You are leaving your trace on history, sealing the scars of the long war with fresh stone and sweat. The work is backbreaking, but there's a shared sense of purpose you haven't felt since that final, desperate charge. In the spring, they arrive. Not warships bristling with spears, but fat-bellied merchant cogs flying the standards of Pylos, Orchomnus, and even distant Sparta. They come bearing the ransom. The wealth that floods the city's treasury is staggering, a king's fortune multiplied by 10. You pause in your work on the walls to watch the spectacle at the port below. Bronze ingots, shaped like ox hides, are stacked into glittering red-gold mountains on the docks. Tin from the far lands of the west, essential for making true bronze. Crates of intricately painted pottery, bolts of linen and dyed wool, and coffers overflowing with gold and amber jewelry. It's the entire material wealth of a civilization offered up in exchange for their broken kings. A scribe next to you groans, shaking his head. "I'll be counting these blasted tripods for the next year," he mutters. "My wrist already hurts just thinking about it." The sheer logistics of victory, it turns out, involve a truly epic amount of paperwork. This isn't just reparation, it's fuel. King Priam and Prince Hector do not intend to simply patch up the old city. They are building a new Troy, a true seat of power, the capital of what they are calling the renewed dominion of Wilusa. In the language of the great Hittite kings to the east, your land has always been Wilusa, and now it will be a name spoken with respect, not as a troublesome vassal state. You hear the architects and foremen shouting their plans and measurements. Historians and linguists still debate the specifics of the Trojan language, but the prevailing theory suggests it was a part of the Anatolian family, closely related to Luwian. It's a guttural, powerful-sounding tongue, and it's the language of creation now, describing new temples with taller columns, a wider marketplace, and even an extension of the great citadel itself. Troy is not just healing, it's growing. A phoenix rising not from ashes, but from a decade of rubble and resilience. Hector, for his part, ensures the city's muscle grows along with its beauty. The army is reformed. The ransom money is used to provide every soldier with new equipment, stronger shields, sharper spears, and helmets of a new, improved design that offers better protection for the face. The old citizen militia is being drilled into a standing, professional force. The training is relentless. One of your comrades, sweating through a series of grueling drills, leans over to you and wheezes. "Honestly, I think I preferred fighting the Achaeans." At least then, you got a few days off between major engagements. One afternoon, a special courier arrives, not from the west, but from the east, from the heartland of Anatolia. It's a clay tablet from the court of the Hittite great king himself, impressed with the intricate marks of cuneiform script. It's a letter of formal congratulations to his brother, Priam, on the defeat of the Sea Peoples. But between the lines of diplomatic praise is a carefully worded reassessment. The old power dynamic is gone. Troy is no longer the junior partner seeking protection. It is a proven military power in its own right, the master of the Aegean gateway. The letter is a probe, a test, the opening move in a new and complex game of international politics. That evening, your work on the wall is done. You stand on the newly finished parapet, the stones still cool beneath your hands. The calluses on your hands have softened from masonry, only to be replaced by new ones from handling coarse rope and the smooth wood of an oar. Your world, once defined by the unyielding stone of Troy's walls, is now one of shifting tides and endless blue horizons. You've been assigned to the Sea Wolf, one of the new ships in Hector's burgeoning fleet. She's a lean, hungry-looking vessel, a pentaconta with 25 oars to a side, a reinforced ram at the prow, and a contingent of Marines, yourself included, who are learning that fighting on a rolling deck is a completely different kind of deadly dance. The ship smells perpetually of pine pitch, salt, and the vaguely unpleasant odor of your 50 damp shipmates. It's the smell of Troy's new foreign policy. Your mission is a grand tour of the Aegean, a series of what the official dispatches call friendship and trade negotiations. Your captain, a man with more scars than teeth, calls it making them offers they can't refuse. It's a nice, diplomatic way of establishing a protection racket. Scholars still debate the extent to which late Bronze Age trade was driven by state-controlled palaces versus independent, entrepreneurial merchants. On this voyage, it seems to be a bit of both. The ship's primary cargo and mission are state-sanctioned, but there are a handful of private merchants aboard, their eyes gleaming at the prospect of new markets, ready to piggyback on the Navy's considerable influence. It's a Bronze Age public-private partnership, but with more spears and significantly less paperwork. Your first stop is the island of Lemnos. Its chieftain, a nervous man who clearly prospered under Achaean patronage, meets you at the harbor. Your captain presents him with lavish gifts, finely woven Trojan cloaks, elegant pottery, and a ceremonial bronze dagger. As he offers the gifts with one hand, his other rests casually on the hilt of his own very functional, very battle-worn sword. The chieftain sees it, you see it, everyone sees it. It's a masterclass in non-verbal negotiation. By sunset, a treaty is signed. Lemnos will now trade exclusively with Troy and will offer safe harbor to its ships. In return, Troy offers its protection. Protection from whom? It's a question no one is rude enough to ask. You sail from island to island, repeating this polite, menacing ballet. You are becoming an expert in the varied reactions of small, suddenly vulnerable island rulers. Some are defiant until they see the number of armed men on your deck. Some are relieved, eager for a new, powerful friend in a world suddenly filled with predators. You learn the rhythms of the sea. By day, you watch the coastline, a reassuringly solid guide. At night, out on the open water, you learn the art of celestial navigation. Your watch captain teaches you how to find north using the Great Bear, how to read the language of the stars. It's a profoundly humbling experience, steering 100 tons of wood and men by that cold, distant light, a technique as old as sailing itself. It's also profoundly boring, a stillness punctuated only by your stomach rumbling for something other than the rock-hard tack and salted fish that constitutes your diet. You'd kill for a loaf of fresh bread from the bakeries near Troy's western gate. 1 week, you are forced to hug the coastline of the mainland, the former heart of the Achaean world. From the safety of the sea, you see it. A plume of dark smoke rising from a hilltop citadel that you know to be in the domain of Diomes. It's not a signal fire. It's the greasy, black smoke of a city being sacked and burned. The power vacuum you helped create is pulling their world apart. Warlords, once kept in check by Agamemnon's authority, are now carving out their own petty kingdoms. The mainland is cannibalizing itself. The sight fills you not with triumph, but with a quiet sense of dread. Chaos is a fire that can easily spread. The final and most important stop on your tour is the great island of Crete, the ancient home of the Minoans. Their power has long since faded, and for the last century they've been subjects of the Mycenaeans. Now they are adrift. Your ship anchors in a port near what's left of the Grand Palace at Knossos. The negotiations here are longer, more serious. The Cretans are skilled traders and ancient mariners. They aren't as easily intimidated, but they are also realists. They see the burning mainland, they've heard the tales of Troy's victory, and they know the future lies on the sea. An alliance is forged, a true partnership. Troy gets access to Cretan ports, their skilled shipwrights, and their trade networks that reach all the way to Egypt. Crete gets the military backing of the new masters of the Aegean. As the sea wolf turns for home, its hold filled with Cretan wine, fragrant oils, and the promise of a dozen other trade agreements, you feel the shift. The Aegean Sea, once a hostile space you peered at from behind stone walls, now feels like your backyard. The waves seem to recognize your flag. The winds feel favorable. You pass through the Dardanelles, the great waterway that is the source of Troy's strategic power, and you see other Trojan ships heading out as you are heading in. It's a highway now, a bustling artery. Your sea legs are barely gone before you're given a new, far more dangerous assignment. The celebrations in Troy are confident, but your leaders are not fools. Hector summons you and a small handful of others to his private study. He needs to know what's happening on the mainland, the true state of the Achaean kingdoms. Rumors and refugee stories are not enough. He needs eyes on the ground. And so you trade your new Trojan Marine's uniform for the rough, homespun rags of a wandering Argive merchant. Your mission is to travel through the heart of your former enemy's lands, to assess their strength, and to see if any new leader is rising to threaten Troy. It's one thing to defeat an army, it's another to make sure it stays dead. You land at a small, forgotten cove on the coast of the Peloponnese, your ship slipping away before dawn. The difference is immediate and jarring. The air itself feels heavier, thick with suspicion. The villages you pass through are half empty, the people gaunt-faced and hostile. There is no laughter, no commerce, just the shuttered silence of fear. Your cover story is that you're a trader from the north, looking for olive oil. It's a thin pretext, and your attempts at speaking their guttural, clumsy dialect feel foolish on your Anatolian tongue. You make a mental note to give the language a one-star review if you ever make it home. The journey inland is a descent into anarchy. The great, paved roads of the Mycenaean kings are now bandit trails. You see fields lying fallow, olive groves untended. The complex, palace-run agricultural system that fed their armies has completely shattered. One evening, your small party is ambushed by a group of men who look more like starving wolves than soldiers. Their leader is a huge, brutish man, and the helmet he wears is a masterpiece. A conical cap crafted from dozens of gleaming, curved boar tusks. You recognize it as the mark of a Mycenaean champion, a piece of armor that would have taken a craftsman months to make. Now it's the plunder of a common thug leading a pack of highwaymen, a priceless symbol of a fallen civilization reduced to just another piece of loot. You finally reach the vicinity of Pylos, the legendary seat of wise, old King Nestor. What you find is not the gleaming citadel of song, but a tomb. The lower town is in ruins, and the great palace on the hill, while not completely destroyed, is dying from the inside out. The remaining nobles, a gaggle of distant cousins and opportunistic lieutenants, are locked in a paranoid power struggle. They are, you think with a grim sense of humor, fighting over who gets to be captain of a sinking ship. At this point, it's a volunteer position. Posing as a messenger, you gain entry to the palace itself. The famous, brightly colored frescoes are peeling from the walls, the corridors are filled with refuse, and the great Megaron, where a king once held court, is now a squalid barracks for a handful of personal guards. Your true goal is the heart of the palace administration, the archive. You find the room where scribes once meticulously recorded every jar of oil, every head of livestock, every bronze ingot in the king's possession. The clay tablets are still there, scattered across the floor like broken pottery. This is Linear B, the complex script of the Mycenaean bureaucracy, and it is now utterly useless. The system it supported is gone. The people who could read it are dead or scattered. The kingdom's entire institutional memory is dissolving into dust. You pick up a fragment, you see the pictograms for a chariot, for a helmet. It's a ghost of a language for a ghost of a kingdom. This, you realize, is the true meaning of a dark age. Not just war and poverty, but the loss of knowledge, the erasure of a society's mind. Historians in some other, far-flung future might debate the primary cause of this collapse, citing everything from climate change to mysterious sea peoples. But you, standing here in the ruins, know the truth. Whatever other pressures this society was under, Troy's victory was the single, decisive blow that decapitated its leadership and sent it spiraling into this irreversible decline. You were the catalyst. That night, huddled in a corner of the Great Hall, you listened to a bard. He isn't singing the glorious tales of heroes like the bards of Troy. He plucks a mournful tune on his lyre and sings of a great fleet that sailed east and never returned. He sings of kings lost to a foreign shore, of betrayal at home, of sons killing fathers for a broken crown. There is no Cleos, no glory in his song. It is a dirge. The grand, unifying story of a victorious war at Troy. The very story that would have forged a common, Greek, identity in another world, is absent. In its place are only these miserable local tales of failure and decay. This is the unhomeric age. You have seen enough. The mainland is broken beyond repair. They are no threat. They are a memory. Your mission is complete. You slip out of the palace before dawn and begin. When your ship finally sails back through the Dardanelles and docks at the foot of Troy, the return is a physical shock. The air itself feels different. You've spent weeks breathing the stale miasma of decay and fear on the mainland, and now you're inhaling the vibrant, chaotic atmosphere of a boomtown. The port bustles with ships from Crete, from Cyprus, from the far coasts of Syria. The quayside is a riot of sound and color, of languages you recognize and others you don't. The Anatolian tongue you share with your kin, once the language of a single besieged city, is now the lingua franca of the entire Eastern Sea. You walk up from the harbor into the city, and the contrast with the dying Mycenaean world you just left behind is so profound it makes you dizzy. Here the frescoes being painted on new villas are bright and confident, depicting not the stiff, formal processions of the Achaeans, but dynamic scenes of horse training on the plains and Trojan galleys ruling the waves. This is more than just rebuilding, it's a renaissance. A new, uniquely Trojan culture is flowering, nurtured by peace, power, and the flood of wealth and ideas from its new trading partners. You see it in a potter's workshop, where the craftsman is skillfully shaping a vessel with a stylized human face. Archaeologists in another time will puzzle over these, debating the precise function of the so-called face pots found at Troy. Were they for ritual use, portraits, or simply a popular decorative style? Here and now, you see it's becoming all three. A trendy piece of art that people are starting to associate with the city's unique character. A must-have item for any household with aspirations. An old merchant, watching a crate of them being loaded for export, chuckles to you. First we send the soldiers, then the priests, then the potters, he says, his eyes twinkling. The pots are the most effective conquerors in the long run. You walk through the newly expanded market, and the very air smells of success. The aroma of baking bread and roasting meat mingles with something more exotic. It's the scent of the city's new perfume industry. With trade routes to the east secure, Trojan perfumers now have access to frankincense and myrrh, which they blend with local olive oil and botanicals like cypress and myrtle, using secret, coveted recipes. The wealthy elite of the city, both men and women, now carry this scent with them, a fragrant, invisible cloak of status. It's just one of the many new trends. Fashions are changing at a bewildering pace. Last season, everyone was adopting the severe, geometric patterns of Hittite courtly dress. Now, thanks to the new alliance, vibrant textiles and flounced skirts from Crete are all the rage. Keeping up with it all, you muse, is almost as stressful as the siege was. The deepest change is in the soul of the city, its religion. The old gods who protected the city through the war are now being elevated into a new, dominant pantheon. The focus is shifting towards the powerful Anatolian mother goddess figures, like Cybele, whose worship has always been a deep, and ancient current in this land. You witness a great festival in her honor. It's nothing like the formal Olympian rites you heard the Achaeans practiced. This is ecstatic, chaotic, and deeply connected to the earth. The rhythm of the drums is hypnotic, the dancing is wild, and the entire city seems to fall into a collective trance of thanksgiving for its survival and prosperity. The gods of the defeated Achaeans are fading, their temples on other islands falling into disuse or being quietly rededicated. One of Hector's advisors jokes that a special committee is trying to merge 3 different local sea gods into one cohesive deity for the new Panagaean religion. But the theological arguments are apparently more brutal than any battle. One afternoon, from a distance, you see her. Helen, she is walking in a procession of priestesses for the new Grand Temple. Her famous, devastating beauty is still there, but it's muted now, transformed into a serene, remote grace. She is no longer Helen of Sparta, the face that launched 1,000 ships. She is a Trojan holy woman, her identity remade, her past a closed book. She is the ultimate symbol of the victory, not just a prize of war, but a living monument, her existence a constant, quiet reminder that Troy won, her husband lost, and their entire world was erased. She doesn't look at the crowds. She just keeps her eyes fixed on the temple doors, a beautiful ghost in a city that has become her gilded cage. This new Trojan culture is the city's most successful export. On your journeys, you see its influence everywhere. In the port of Mytilene on Lesbos, you see a new temple being constructed with the distinctive sloping walls and stone anchors of the Trojan style. You see local island chieftains wearing Trojan-made bronze cuirasses and adopting Trojan military tactics. The nascent identity of Hellas or Achaea, which might have been forged in the crucible of a victory at Troy, has died. Your city's newfound prestige has sent ripples across the Great Sea, and now the larger, older predators of your world are beginning to circle, their interest piqued. You are standing in the main courtyard of the citadel, part of an honor guard so polished and drilled you feel less like a soldier and more like a decorative statue. Before you is a delegation from the east, from the court of the Hittite great king at Hattusa. They are stern, bearded men, dressed in heavy, layered robes despite the Aegean sun, their bearing rigid and uncompromising. They have come, officially, to formalize the new treaty discussed in their king's letter. Unofficially, they have come to take the measure of this upstart city that was once their vassal. You stand guard outside the Megaron as Hector and King Priam meet with the Hittite ambassador. The doors are closed, but the air is thick with tension. You can't hear the words, but you know the history. You know that scholars in another lifetime will debate the meaning of the Tawagalawa letter, a famous Hittite tablet that speaks of a diplomatic conflict with an Achaean king over this very city, Wilusa. The Hittites have long memories. Their archives are filled with records of treaties, betrayals, and border disputes. Now Hector is in there, not begging for protection, but negotiating as an equal. He is redefining a relationship that has existed for centuries, and every word spoken in that room could either secure Troy's future or plunge it into a new and even more dangerous war. Halfway through the third day of these tense, grinding negotiations, something remarkable happens. A runner arrives at the citadel gates, breathless, announcing the arrival of a ship, an Egyptian ship. It's a bold, almost theatrical move. The vessel is unlike anything you've seen before. Its lines are different. Its sail is a vast square of brilliant white linen, and it flies the banner of the pharaoh himself. It sails into your harbor as if it owns it, a deliberate and unmissable statement. The Hittites, emerging from their meeting for a recess, see it too. Their faces, already stern, harden into masks of pure granite. A Trojan courtier, standing near you, takes a long sip from his wine cup and murmurs, "Well, this just made things wonderfully awkward. I do hope they brought enough refreshments." The Egyptians have come with a counteroffer. They have watched Troy's victory from afar, and as the eternal rivals of the Hittites, they see an opportunity. They see a new naval power that could be a useful thorn in the side of their enemy. Their env, a smooth-headed priest of Amun-Ra with eyes like polished obsidian, presents gifts that make the ransom of the Achaeans look like pocket change. Chests of Nubian gold, carved ivory, fragrant cedarwood from Lebanon. And he brings an invitation from the pharaoh for a Trojan embassy to visit his great capital on the Nile. And so your life takes its most incredible turn yet. You are chosen, due to your experience at sea and your steady record, to be a marine in the official delegation to the court of Egypt. The journey south is an education in itself. You sail past lands that were only myths and merchants' tales to you before, your ship a tiny speck on an enormous sea. The heat grows more intense with every passing day. Finally, you leave the open sea and enter one of the mouths of the Great Nile. The world transforms. The land is a carpet of impossible green, teeming with a density of life you have never imagined. And then you see the city of Pi-Rameses, the capital of Pharaoh Rameses the Great. Troy is a mighty citadel. This is a sprawling metropolis that seems to cover the entire world. Its temples and palaces so vast they seem to challenge the sky. The reception at the pharaoh's court is a terrifying lesson in protocol. A royal scribe briefs your delegation, listing 100 things you are forbidden to do in the presence of the living God. You must not speak unless spoken to. You must not look him directly in the eye. You must prostrate yourself fully on the ground, not once, but 3 times. You find yourself more nervous about sneezing at the wrong moment than you ever were facing a line of charging Achaeans. It's a relief to know you're not alone. Even your own proud ambassador, a cousin of the king, is sweating through his finest robes. The audience hall is a cavern of gold and lapis lazuli. The pharaoh sits on a gilded throne, a remote and immobile figure of immense power. The gift exchange is the centerpiece of the visit. Your ambassador presents Troy's finest offerings: masterwork bronze armor, spirited Trojan horses, priceless amber. The pharaoh accepts them with a slight nod. Then his vizier presents the reciprocal gifts, and you overhear a Trojan scribe muttering to his assistant as he records the items, cross-referencing them with a list of previous diplomatic exchanges found in the Hittite archives, which Troy now possesses. "Make a note," the scribe whispers. "The gold plating on that ceremonial axe seems a bit thin. We must remember this when drafting our thank you letter. The pettiness of these great kings is, the years you've found move differently in peacetime. The frantic, blood-soaked hours of the war have stretched into calm, prosperous decades. You are older now. The strength in your arms has been replaced by a quiet authority in your voice, and you occasionally find yourself on one of the civic councils that now govern Troy's ever-expanding interests. The memories of that final charge, of guarding Odysseus, of the splendors of the pharaoh's court, they feel like stories you might tell a grandchild, not things you lived through yourself. Troy has grown fat and happy, its cultural and economic dominance of the Aegean so complete that it's simply taken for granted, like the rising of the sun. But sometimes, on a clear day, you still look west across the sea, towards the land that was once the domain of the Achaeans, and you wonder what became of the ghosts. The answer, you know from merchant reports and the occasional scouting mission, is not much. The great fire of their civilization, which you saw beginning to smolder during your spy mission all those years ago, has burned itself out. The ashes have grown cold. The mainland is a patchwork of petty chiefdoms, a land that has fallen out of history. New peoples have moved into the vacuum. Rough, iron-working tribes from the north, who in another world might have been called Dorians, now occupy the Peloponnese. There is still significant debate among historians, even your own Trojan ones, about the historical reality of a Dorian invasion, whether it was a mass migration, a slow creep, or simply an uprising of the local peasant class. From Troy's perspective, it hardly matters. They are just another piece in the fractured mosaic of what was once a unified Mycenaean world. The key difference, the great silence at the heart of their culture, is the absence of a unifying story. There was no victory at Troy. There were no wily heroes returning home after 10 years of glorious war. There was only a catastrophic, humiliating defeat. The bards who survived didn't compose an Iliad or an Odyssey. They sang grim, miserable dirges of failure, which people quickly grew tired of hearing. Without that great, central myth to bind them together, the people of the mainland never developed a sense of shared identity. They are not Hellenes. That word doesn't exist. They are Ionians clinging to the coast of Attica. They are Dorians in their rough hill forts. They are Arcadians isolated in the mountains. A Trojan merchant you know, just returned from a frustrating trip to the mainland, complained that he had to renegotiate the price for a single amphora of wine 3 times in 3 different dialects just to move it 20 miles inland. Their idea of foreign policy, you reflect, is arguing with the next village over the ownership of a goat. A few years back, a well-meaning but naive chieftain near a place called Olympia tried to change this. He attempted to host a great religious festival, inviting all the tribes to lay down their arms and compete in athletic contests in honor of some local storm god. It was a disaster. Most tribes didn't come, seeing it as a trap. The ones that did come treated the athletic events as extensions of their bitter rivalries. The javelin contest became a deadly skirmish. The wrestling matches ended in blood feuds. You heard the whole affair was abandoned after the first day. The only competition they could all agree on was throwing rocks at outsiders. And since every tribe considered every other tribe an outsider, it was a very brief and chaotic event. The seed of Pan-Hellenic unity was there, perhaps, but the soil was barren. The most profound loss for them was the death of the written word. In your youth, you saw the last vestiges of their Linear B script, a complex system for palace bureaucrats. When the palaces fell, writing fell with it. They became a people without records, without history. Meanwhile, Troy, in constant contact with the great civilizations of the East, adopted and adapted the simple and efficient Phoenician script to write its own Luwian language, creating a true alphabet that was easy for merchants, soldiers, and even poets to learn. Literacy blossomed in your Trojan Empire, while the mainland descended into an age of illiterate darkness. The flow of knowledge, philosophy, and history now completely bypassed them. You unroll a modern map in your study, a beautiful thing drawn on expensive papyrus from Egypt. To the east and across the sea, the territory is clearly marked, the Trojan hegemony. Its trade routes are drawn in confident red lines, connecting 100 allied ports and colonies. But to the west, where Greece should be, the mapmaker has simply sketched a vague, undefined coastline and written untribed peoples in the empty space, a cartographic shrug. The idea of Hellas was never a geographic certainty, it was a cultural project, an act of collective imagination built on a foundation of shared myth. In this world, the story was never told. The project was never started. The name for a nation of proud, argumentative, brilliant people died as a whisper on a blood-soaked beach, beneath the shadow of your unconquered walls. The Troy you grow up in is a victim of its own success. 2 generations of peace and undisputed dominance over the Aegean have led to a population bursting at the seams of the Great Walls. The streets are a constant, jostling river of humanity, and the price of land within the city has become absurd. For a younger son like you, with no great inheritance to look forward to, the future feels constrained. So when the Royal Council, led by the aging but still formidable sons of Hector, announces a grand project of state-sponsored colonization, your ears perk up. There is, as always, a debate about the primary motivations for this push. The official proclamations speak of securing trade routes and bringing the light of Trojan civilization to distant shores. But you and the thousands of other young men and women signing up know the simpler truth. Stenocoria, land hunger. You want a plot of earth to call your own, a place to build a life away from the shadow of the capital. You stand on the deck of a transport ship, part of a whole fleet cutting west across the Mediterranean. This is no desperate migration. It is a meticulously planned military and civilian operation. The ships are laden not just with people, but with prefabricated temple foundations, surveyors' tools, seed grain, and breeding pairs of livestock. Your expedition's leader is a man named Lycomedes, a veteran commander given the official title of Catists, the founder. His job is to bring a new Troy into being, fully formed, on the shores of the great, fertile island the natives call Sicania, Sicily. An older colonist next to you, a carpenter, grumbles good-naturedly. They've planned everything so perfectly, right down to the number of nails per household. It's so organized it takes all the fun out of building a new city from scratch. When you finally make landfall on a sweeping bay on the island's eastern coast, the untamed beauty of the place steals your breath. This is a wilder, greener, more vibrant land than the plains of Troy. As the settlers disembark, the first order of business is the foundation ceremony. The Catists plows a ceremonial furrow to mark the line where the city walls will rise. He then proceeds to the spot designated for the temple of the Trojan Apollo, the god of colonists. You watch as he places a small lead box into a pre-dug hole in the earth, a foundation deposit. Inside, you are told, are seeds from the first sheaf of Trojan wheat, a scroll with the city's founding charter, and a single gold coin bearing the wolf and shepherd sigil of your people. It's a message to the gods and to posterity, a quirky and ancient ritual to anchor your new home to the spiritual world. The natives, Sicils as they call themselves, watch from the hills. They are dark-haired, fierce-looking people, armed with crude bronze and stone weapons. The first interactions are tense, but the Trojans aren't here for conquest, not initially. They're here for trade. You watch as your leaders offer them gifts. Sharp bronze knives, colorful pottery, strong wine. The Sicils, in turn, offer guidance on this strange new land. You learn which plants are edible, where the best hunting is, and which local spirits are best avoided. It's a fragile piece, but a functional one. You can't help but be a little smug about the civilizing influence you bring. You trade a local chieftain a few amphorae of Trojan wine, and a month later, you see him presiding over his tribe, wearing a poorly imitated Trojan cloak, and trying to get his unruly hair to lie flat in the style of the heroes depicted on your coins. Of course, not all influence is so welcome. You are put on a hunting party for fresh meat, and one of your companions, a baker from Troy, wrinkles his nose at the local food you sample. They seem to think the height of culinary art is just showing a route to a fire for a few seconds, he complains. We have much work to do. While you build your new life in the west, other fleets have gone north, through the Bosphorus and into the vast, dark expanse of the Black Sea. This sea, a source of endless grain, gold, and timber, is now effectively a Trojan lake. Their control of the straits, the geographic choke point that was the source of their ancient wealth and the cause of the Great War, gives them a total monopoly. Trojan colonies spring up along its shores, from the coast of Thrace to the foothills of the Caucasus, ensuring a steady river of resources flows back to the heart of the empire. Years pass. Your new city, which you named Leonessus after a town allied with Troy in the Old War, is no longer a collection of huts. It is a proper city, with strong stone walls, a bustling agora, and a magnificent temple whose columns gleam in the Mediterranean sun. You have your own plot of land, a vineyard that produces a respectable, if not yet legendary, wine. You have a family, you have a future. From this western outpost, you are a part of a great network of Trojan daughter cities that now dot the map of the known world. You have taken the culture of the... You find that in a prosperous and stable empire, the most valuable territory to conquer is knowledge. You are back in the heart of the empire, the great city of Troy itself. It has changed in the years you've been away in the colonies. It's not just richer and more crowded, it's more thoughtful. With survival and dominance assured, the great minds of your generation have turned from the arts of war to the arts of peace. You are sitting on a marble bench in a sun-dappled grove on the city's edge, a new academy funded by the state. This isn't a place for idle chatter, it's the intellectual engine room of the Trojan hegemony. The philosophy that has blossomed here is uniquely Trojan. It is a philosophy of the horse breeder, the shipwright, and the engineer. It is concerned with what is real, what is useful, and what works. In the lands of the defeated Achaeans, the Ionian coast that might have birthed a different kind of thinking is now just a quiet province. The speculative questions that might have been asked there, what is the world made of? What is the nature of the divine? Are dismissed here as amusing but pointless diversions. You once heard a student ask the academy's leading mind, a brilliant polymath named Heraclides, about the nature of abstract justice. Heraclides, a man who designed aqueducts before he wrote treatises, scoffed. Justice, he said, without looking up from his schematics, is a well-enforced contract, a standardized system of weights and measures, and a harbor that doesn't charge extortionate docking fees. Anything else is poetry. Next question. This is the logic of the horse lords. It is practical, empirical, and relentlessly results-driven. There is a long-standing scholarly debate, even now in the talking shops of the academy, on the relationship between science and technology. Does scientific understanding drive technological innovation, or do practical needs drive scientific discovery? Here in Troy, the verdict is clear. The needs of the empire are the mother of all invention. The central question is never, why does it happen? But how can we make it happen better? You saw two esteemed scholars in a heated argument the other day that lasted for the better part of an hour. Thinking you were about to be treated to a deep debate on the nature of the soul, you moved closer to listen. It turned out they were debating the optimal aggregate mixture for hydraulic concrete. Today, you are here to witness a demonstration. Heraclides and his students are unveiling their latest project. For years, they have been compiling star charts from across the empire, from the cold, clear nights of the Black Sea to the southern skies seen from Egypt. Their goal, to create a perfect navigational tool. What they reveal is a bronze box, about the size of a large book. Its face, a complex web of interlocking dials and pointers. Inside, they explain, is a system of precisely interlocking gears. By turning a crank on the side, a navigator can accurately predict the position of the sun, moon, and key constellations for any given day of the year. It's a mechanical calendar and star finder, a proto-antikythera mechanism born not from a desire to model the cosmos, but from the need to get a shipload of grain from your colony in Sicily to Troy with minimal fuss. It is breathtakingly brilliant and utterly practical. This way of thinking has created a new kind of hero for the Trojan age. The engineer priest, the physician biologist, the statesman historian. The study of anatomy is advanced not through abstract curiosity, but because better trained doctors can keep more soldiers and workers healthy. Agricultural science blossoms because improved crop yields can support larger populations in the colonies and fill the state's granaries. Political science is the hot topic among the sons of the elite, who study the histories of the Hittite and Egyptian empires to learn the practical art of managing a diverse, multicultural state without it all falling apart. You remember talking to a cousin of yours who runs a trading post in what used to be Ionia. He told you about a local eccentric who was going around telling everyone that everything was at its base, made of water. Your cousin just laughed. I told him my warehouse is made of stone, my ships are made of wood, and my profits are made of silver, he'd said, and all three seem solid enough to me. I advised him to spend less time getting wet and more time learning double-entry bookkeeping. That, in a nutshell, is the Trojan intellectual revolution. It is a turning away from the mystical and the metaphysical, and a doubling down on the material, the measurable, and the manageable. As you leave the academy, the evening air cool on your face, you feel a deep sense of intellectual security. The ideas and inventions centuries drift by like clouds over the Aegean. The empire your ancestors forged has matured. It is a vast, interconnected machine of trade and administration, run by the principles of practical logic laid down by the first generations of thinkers. You live in an age of comfortable, almost unquestioned Trojan dominance. The house you live in is heated by a clever system of hypocausts perfected by Trojan engineers. The histories you read are written in a clear, precise alphabet, and the star charts you consult were plotted in the great academy. The world feels orderly, known, and secure. And then, the rumors begin. Whispers from the east, carried on the last leg of the Silk Road, of a new power, a fire consuming the old world. A name is spoken with a mix of awe and terror, Persia. First, the kingdom of Lydia, your longtime trading partner and buffer state, is swallowed in a single campaign. Then the ancient cities of Babylon and even mighty Egypt fall to this new dynasty, the Achaemenids. In what seems like the blink of an eye, a single great king rules from the Indus Valley to the shores of the Aegean. Their empire is a juggernaut, a land-based beast of unimaginable size and power, and it has come to your doorstep. The Trojan provinces in western Anatolia, the lands once known as Ionia, are now the front line. Your empire, the undisputed master of the sea, now shares a border with the undisputed master of the land. The Persian demand arrives at the court in Troy, which is now a sprawling metropolis far grander than the city of Priam. The envoys of the great king, a man named Darius, are polite, but their message is absolute. They ask for a bowl of Trojan earth and a flask of Aegean water, the traditional symbols of submission. Your city's ruling council, the descendants of Hector and the colonial founders, listen patiently. When the Persians are done, the council thanks them for their long journey and dismisses them. You hear a story, probably embellished but widely repeated in the wine shops, that the council's official response was to send back a cask of Troy's finest aged wine and a meticulously itemized bill for the cost of the envoy's lodgings. The message is clear: we are not subjects, we are Troy. This is the great Eastern gamble. No one in the Trojan Council is foolish enough to underestimate the Persians. Their military intelligence, though hampered by your own state's efficient security, reports an army of unprecedented size. A general looking over the estimates is said to have remarked, "They're bringing everyone. I truly hope they packed enough snacks for the journey, because the logistics of feeding that horde are going to be a history lesson in themselves." This is not a war against disorganized tribes. Historians on your side of the world will debate the Persian king's true goal. Is it the complete conquest of your empire, or merely a punitive expedition to smash your naval power and secure his western flank? The council decides it cannot risk finding out. Troy will fight. The mobilization is a testament to centuries of Trojan pragmatism. It is not a frantic scramble of citizen soldiers like the wars of old. It is the smooth, deliberate activation of an imperial war machine. Orders, written on papyrus scrolls, flash across the sea to your colonies in Sicily, Crete, and the Black Sea. The colonial fleets converge on the Hellespont. The state granaries are opened. The professional army, equipped with the best bronze and iron weapons from Trojan foundries, mans the fortifications. The engineers from the academy are now the most important men in the empire, their skills in metallurgy, ballistics, and fortification put to the ultimate test. The great king himself, now Xerxes, the son of Darius, arrives at the Hellespont with his legendary host. And here, the Persian war plan hits a snag it never encountered in its conquest of the land. They cannot simply walk into Europe. Between them and the plains of Thrace stands the fortress city of Troy, and the narrow strait of water it commands is swarming with the Trojan fleet. The Persians begin constructing their famous pontoon bridge, a marvel of engineering. Your own engineers watch the process from the city walls with professional interest. The workmanship is impressive for a land-based culture, one observes to you, but their understanding of the tidal currents here is, shall we say, remedial. This ought to be interesting. When the first great storm comes, the Trojan fleet doesn't have to lift a finger. The sea, your sea, does the work for them, smashing the pontoon bridge to splinters. The great king's second attempt is more successful, but it doesn't matter. He can march his army across, but he cannot supply it without controlling the water, and the naval war begins in earnest. It is not a war of heroic duels. It is a war of maneuver, of supply lines, of technology. In the narrow confines of the straits, the larger, more cumbersome Persian ships are outmaneuvered by the swifter Trojan galleys. Your ships are equipped with siphons that can spray a volatile, burning liquid, a guarded secret from the academy that clings to wood and turns enemy vessels into floating infernos. The conflict settles into a grinding war of attrition. The Persian army is a giant stranded on the shore, unable to bring its full weight to bear. The Trojan Empire, the great war with Persia, bleeds both empires white. It ends not with a triumphant victory parade, but with a sullen, exhausted truce. The Persian great king, his navy shattered and his army's supply lines collapsing, withdraws from the shores of Europe, his ambition checked for a generation. Your Trojan Empire stands, bruised and battered, but unbroken. The cost, however, has been immense. An entire generation of your brightest and best lies dead from Thrace to the Hellespont. The treasury is empty. The confident swagger of the Golden Age is gone, replaced by the grim sobriety of a survivor. The focus of the empire turns inward, from expansion to consolidation and recovery. In the quiet of your study, where you now serve on the Council for Western Affairs, you unroll maps of your colonies in Sicania and the Italian peninsula. It's a welcome distraction from the eastern frontier. A colleague jokes, dealing with the great king's endless ego was exhausting. For a change of pace, let's review the Italian reports. Just a quaint collection of squabbling city-states and rustic tribes. How relaxing. And as you look at the map, you reflect on the greatest story that was never told. In the old world, the one that ended the night the wooden horse was discovered, the poet Virgil would one day write a grand epic, the Aeneid. It would tell of a Trojan hero, Aeneas, a prince who escaped the sack of his city, carrying his father on his back and leading his people on a divine quest to found a new Troy in Italy. This myth would become the bedrock of the Roman Empire. In your world, there was no sack of Troy. Aeneas was a real man, a minor prince of the royal house, but he never fled a burning city. He lived a long and prosperous life, served on the city council as you do now, and died peacefully of old age, buried with honors in the land of his birth. His destiny was to be a footnote in the history of a successful empire, not the father of a new one. The Aeneid is a poem that will never be written. Its hero had nothing to run from, and so the destiny of Italy is profoundly, irrevocably altered. You look at the reports from your governors in the south. The Trojan colonies there, Lionessus, Sibar, Croton, are thriving, but they have grown independent and fractious. A loose confederation of city-states more interested in bickering over trade tariffs than in unity. To their north are the Etruscans, a powerful and enigmatic people who dominate central Italy. They are a true civilization, with great walled cities, a unique language, and a religion that fascinates your scholars. They practice complex forms of divination, including reading the future from the livers of sacrificed sheep. A Trojan engineer, reading a report on this, once remarked, "It's a fascinating system, I'm sure, but our academy prefers to predict the future by calculating material stress loads. The results are, on the whole, more reliable and significantly less messy." Historians in your own academy still debate the origins of the Etruscans, whether they are indigenous, or if the ancient tales of them migrating from Anatolia are true. This theory has made them a subject of intense interest for your council, which views them as either potential long-lost cousins to be embraced or dangerous rivals to be contained. And between these two powers, the Trojans in the south, the Etruscans in the north, are the tribes of the Middle Lands, the Latins, the Samnites, the Umbrians. Your governor in the colony of Cumae writes of them with dismissive contempt. The Latins, his report reads, are a simple, superstitious people living in small hilltop villages. Their primary contribution to civilization appears to be a particularly pungent and salty type of sheep's cheese. We see limited strategic value and have advised our merchants to trade for the cheese, but little else. In the heart of their territory is a dusty trading post on a ford of the Tiber River, a place called Rome. It is nothing. A few hundred huts. In its forum stands a curious black stone, the Lapis Niger, a tiny, ancient shrine to some local spirit that no one pays any mind to. It is a relic of a destiny that will never be fulfilled. Without the galvanizing myth of Aeneas, without the refugee heroes and their divine mandate, Rome never rises. The fierce civic pride, the unique political experiment of the Republic, the relentless, world-conquering ambition, none of it ever sparks into being. The legions are never born. The great paved roads are never built. The peninsula remains a fractured land, a contested frontier between the Trojan south and the Etruscan north. It is a place of vibrant but separate cultures, a place that will never be unified under a single name. Your work on the council now involves overseeing the administration of the Aegean territories, the old Achaean heartlands that have been under Trojan influence for centuries. Your next task is a routine inspection tour to the province of Attica and its main port, a town called Athens. It's a place known for its high-quality marble quarries and its exceptional olive oil, a reliable, if unremarkable, asset to the empire. As your ship sails into the harbor at Piraeus, you prepare yourself for a few days of reviewing tax receipts, inspecting the Trojan-funded aqueduct, and listening politely to the complaints of the local magistrates. You travel up to the city itself, and what strikes you is the quiet. The city is clean, orderly, and moderately prosperous. The people are docile, but the place has no spark. You stand in the Agora, the central marketplace. It's a busy enough place for commerce, with merchants haggling over the price of oil and pottery, but there are no knots of men arguing about politics, no philosophers gathering disciples, no public debates. It's a marketplace of goods, not ideas. You look up at the high rock of the Acropolis. There is no gleaming Parthenon, no monumental gateway. In their place stands a tidy, ancient temple to a local goddess, respectfully maintained, and next to it, the unassuming blockhouse of the small Trojan garrison and the office of the imperial governor. This is a world that never had a golden age of Athens, because Athens never had its moment of glory. The Delian League, the anti-Persian alliance that Athens historically converted into its own private empire, never existed. The great Panagaean power was always Troy. Athens never reaped the tribute of 100 island states, and so it never had the vast treasury needed to fund its democratic experiment or its monumental building projects. More importantly, it never had the surge of patriotic self-confidence that came from leading the charge against Persia. In this timeline, they were a footnote in a war fought and won by you. And so the radical, chaotic, brilliant idea of democratia, rule by the people, withered on the vine. The dominant political philosophy is Trojan, a stable, efficient, technocratic oligarchy run by educated experts and wealthy families. It is a system designed for permanence and order, not for public participation. Later, you walk to a low, sloping hill called the Pnyx. An Athenian guide tells you that in ancient, primitive times, the citizens used to gather here to shout at each other to decide state policy. You find this amusing. Our own governing council tried that once, in the early days, you tell him. We ended up in a 3-hour argument over the catering budget for a state festival. We quickly found that a small, quiet room with a clear agenda works much, much better. The Athenian political spirit, what little remains of it, is a historical curiosity for Trojan scholars. One of your colleagues at the Academy is writing a monograph on the strange Athenian practice of ostracism, where they would vote to exile their own leaders for 10 years by scratching names onto broken shards of pottery. He finds the practice fascinatingly primitive. Such a crude and emotional way to manage political dissent, he'd written. In our empire, when a politician becomes too popular or ambitious, we don't break pottery. We simply promote him to be governor of our colony in the Crimean Peninsula. The long winters, they have a wonderful way of cooling a man's ambitions. It's altogether more elegant and less wasteful. Indeed, the Trojan academic consensus, after studying the fragmented records, is that Athenian democracy was an inherently flawed system. Scholars in Troy still debate how truly democratic it could have been, given its famous exclusion of women, slaves, and foreigners. The official Trojan view is that it was a brief, chaotic experiment in mob rule that would have inevitably collapsed into tyranny. Your well-managed, hierarchical system, they argue, is ultimately more stable and provides a better life for more people. The cultural price of this stability, however, is immense. Without the vibrant, argumentative democracy as its crucible, the great minds of Athens never emerge. A man like Socrates, the gadfly who questioned everything, would have been politely but firmly arrested for disturbing the imperial peace within a week. Without Socrates, there is no Plato. Without Plato, no Aristotle. The entire foundation of Western philosophy is simply absent. The great Athenian theatrical tradition is also gone. You attend a performance one evening. It's a tedious, state-approved pageant celebrating the Trojan victory over the Persians, ending with a song in praise of the new aqueduct. The profound, challenging tragedies of Aeschylus or Sophocles, which interrogated the very nature of justice, fate, and human suffering, were never conceived. There was no democratic audience to challenge, and no state willing to fund such subversive questions. As you prepare to leave, you stand one last time in the silent agora. The air is empty. It is not your duties as a council member take you into the Anatolian heartland, to the city of Pergamos. In the centuries since the war, Pergamos has become the brain of the Trojan Empire. While Troy itself remains the center of political and commercial power, this city, nestled in the hills of Aeolis, has been lavished with imperial funds for a single purpose: to know everything that is worth knowing. This is the home of the Great Library, an institution that has so thoroughly eclipsed the faded memory of Egypt's collection that the name Alexandria is known only to specialist historians. As you approach, you see that the entire upper city is a single, sprawling complex of marble colonnades, lecture halls, and scriptoriums. This is not the silent, dusty repository of scrolls you might imagine. It is a place that hums with a low, intense energy. It is the world's first and only global research university. You walk through the Hall of Mechanics, and you see engineers debating blueprints for a new type of crane. In the atrium of medicine, physicians fresh from the colonies are comparing notes on treating fevers. their conclusions based not on appeals to the gods, but on meticulous, recorded observation of symptoms and outcomes. The mission of this library is not merely to collect, but to codify, verify, and apply. The chief librarian, a famously curmudgeonly man named Thuron, tells you his institution's value is not in the sheer number of scrolls it holds, a pointed jab at the wildly exaggerated claims once made by the Ptolemies in Alexandria. Any fool can hoard papyrus, he says, sniffing disdainfully. Our greatness lies in our catalogue, the Pinax Pergamena. It tells you not only what a book contains, but what it is for. You test this, asking a junior librarian to look up love poetry. He consults the catalogue and replies, straight-faced, "There are no direct entries for that, sir," but the query cross-references to treatises on agricultural fertility rights, several medical texts on cardiac health, and a legal chapter on marriage contracts. Will any of those suffice? It's this ruthless pragmatism that shapes the global intellectual landscape. A scholar from the Etruscan League is here, studying Trojan road-building techniques. A Carthaginian merchant is in the economics wing, learning the principles of Trojan state finance. Knowledge is power, and the Library of Pergamos is the world's central power station. You browse the history section. There are no grand, narrative histories like those a Herodotus might have written. Instead, there are annals, data-driven accounts of crop yields, tax revenues, census figures, and trade volumes. It is history as a set of spreadsheets, the story of the empire told through its material success. A minor fire breaks out one afternoon in a distant wing, and you rush to see the commotion. The chief librarian seems utterly unconcerned. "Calm yourself, councilman," he says, waving a dismissive hand. "That is merely the Western philosophy annex, all replaceable speculation from the pre-imperial Attic tribes. As long as the engineering and sewer management scrolls are safe, the foundations of the empire remain secure." His bias is clear. You recently saw a newly acquired scroll of abstract metaphysics, a gift from a trading partner, being catalogued. The scribe assigned to it was completely baffled. "I don't know where to file this," he complained to a colleague. "It has no diagrams, no equations, and no discernible purpose. I suppose I'll have to create a new subsection under rhetorical amusements." One of the library's greatest achievements was born of necessity. During a brief diplomatic feud a century ago, the Egyptians placed an embargo on papyrus exports, hoping to cripple their intellectual rival. The effort backfired spectacularly. The scholars of Pergamos, funded by an emergency grant from the imperial treasury, perfected a new writing surface, pergamena or parchment. Made from treated animal skins, it is smoother, more durable, and can even be scraped clean and reused. Now, all of the most important texts in the library are being painstakingly transferred from fragile papyrus to this new, superior medium, ensuring their survival for millennia. Trojan knowledge is now stored on a Trojan invention. You spend the evening in the great map room. Here, the world is laid bare, not as a place of myths and monsters, but as a grid of resources and logistical challenges. The maps are updated constantly with reports from sailors, colonial governors, and spies. This room, more than any other, represents the mind of your civilization. It is a mind. The stream of time accelerates. You become unstuck, a disembodied mote of dust drifting on the currents of centuries. You are no longer a soldier, a counselor, or a colonist, but a silent witness watching the long, slow consequences of that single, victorious night unfold. The world you knew, the great Trojan Empire, does not last forever. No empire does, but it does not collapse into a dark age, as the Roman one did in another reality. There is no sudden fall. Instead, it slowly, gracefully transforms. It evolves into a Trojan Commonwealth, a vast network of nations and city-states bound by a shared Anatolian culture, a common tongue, and a unified legal and technical framework inherited from the great library at Pergamos. You drift over the continent of Europe. It is a place utterly alien to the one we know. The great forests of Germania and the plains of Gaul are home to vibrant Celtic and Germanic cultures that were never conquered, never Latinized. They are a patchwork of kingdoms and federations, their technology advanced through trade with the Commonwealth, their art and music uniquely their own. They are not barbarians, they are simply different. Their largest cities are bustling centers of trade, but their political structure seems to be the heavily armed trading post, a model that, while lacking the subtlety of Trojan administration, certainly has the virtue of clarity. There is no France, no Spain, no Holy Roman Empire, because there was no Rome to be holy or an empire to inherit. The legacy of knowledge is Trojan. The ideal is not the Renaissance man who studies the rediscovered arts and philosophies of a lost golden age. The ideal here is the imperial man, the technocrat saint who masters engineering, public health, and logistics for the betterment of society. The great universities in the Celtic city of Lutetia or the Etruscan stronghold of Tarquinia base their curricula on the practical, empirical principles first laid down at Pergamos. Students learn the universal Trojan alphabet, an elegant script adapted from the Phoenicians, now used to write dozens of different languages. The Latin alphabet, like the people who invented it, remains an obscure footnote. You see a great debate taking place among the scholars of this later age. They look back at the historical records, and a familiar question arises. Historians of science still debate the extent of the great intellectual shift of the post-Persian era. Was it a true enlightenment, or simply a codification of existing knowledge that prevented more radical leaps? This world never had a dark age triggered by the fall of an empire, but it also seems to have missed the explosive, chaotic genius of a renaissance or a scientific revolution. It has been a long, steady, continuous hum of progress, without the dissonant, revolutionary chords that defined our own history. You pause, a ghost in a library in a city that might have been London, and you see a historian poring over a translated scroll. He is writing a speculative history, an alternate world. He tries to imagine a reality where the Achaeans had won, where a tiny Latin village conquered the world, where its language and a religion from a desert prophet came to dominate the globe for 2,000 years. You watch him as he shakes his head and sets the scroll aside. It's too improbable. It sounds like a bad epic poem, the kind of fanciful tale that would have been filed under rhetorical amusements at Pergamos. The world you are witnessing is, in many ways, a better one. It is more stable. It is governed by a rational, ordered logic. Its technology is seamless, but as you drift through its clean, well-lit streets, you feel a profound absence. You see no great cathedrals reaching for an impossible heaven. Hear no political arguments born of the revolutionary idea that every citizen has a voice. They mastered the house so completely, so early, that they never spent enough time wrestling. And so, our long journey through this other world comes to a soft and quiet end. The echoes of what if are fading now, the images of a Trojan-molded reality dissolving like mist in the morning sun. The great marble halls of the Library of Pergamos, the bustling, unfamiliar cities of a Europe that never knew Rome, the silent, empty agora of a conquered Athens. All of it now recedes, softening at the edges as the stream of time carries you gently back to the familiar shores of your own here and now. Let the grand weight of these alternate histories drift away, leaving behind only the gentle sense of a story told, a path explored. There are no more empires to build, no more great wars to be fought, no more profound questions of destiny to be pondered tonight. There is only the quiet of your room, the gentle weight of your blankets, and the soft, steady rhythm of your own breathing, a quiet and reassuring anchor in the vast, peaceful ocean of the night. Let the last vestiges of thought loosen their grip, allowing your mind to become as calm and still as a deep harbor after a long and eventful voyage. The story is